Okay, sorry, I'm gonna edit something out. So not only had Gil told a lie about me to the cashier, also someone else in town, I'm not gonna say who since this is gonna be public, unfortunately, there were other efforts by other people who I've now deduced were pimps trying to make sure I didn't have anywhere to shower in an organized fashion. I hope that makes sense. I'll go into that after describing more of this. Okay, so probably, and also the fact that Gil, I didn't put this together until later, because when I first heard that he had lied about me to the cashier, which was like before I ever took a shower at his house, I was like, she told me, she was like, because I talked to the cashier and she said, yeah, he said, we couldn't help but notice, he said you were living with a couple. And I just shrugged it off thinking, oh, it must have been some kind of confusion, or maybe he was talking about someone else and you thought he was talking about me. Like, I didn't even say that because it was in such passing that she had told me that. But later I realized, no, he intentionally told a lie about me to her, because this is how pimps work. They isolate their victims. Even if their victim has no idea they're being plotted on. Especially these organized pimps, but all of them, I'm sure, but especially the organized ones, they start from the very beginning working on their victims. So it took me a while to put together, however many months or whatever. Oh, wait. No, he did tell her that about me. Why would he do that? Because he was trying to, early on, make me seem slutty. I hate to put it that way, but we're talking about rural Texas here. We're talking about Stanford, Texas. It's about 40 minutes from Abilene, Texas. Abilene has a relatively large population, maybe about 300,000. Stanford is about 2,000, maybe. I don't have an exact number on that because it keeps changing every year. But it's an extremely small town out in the middle of nowhere. That's why the land was so inexpensive for me to have purchased. And then Abilene, in turn, is, the closest large city is Dallas. So we're talking about rural Texas here. You're not going to get much more sexist than that. And I already knew that from the time I had spent in Texas in general, moving around all these rural areas. So, you got to think about it like that early on, this guy doesn't even know anything about me. He didn't even know that I had my shell of a tiny home. He didn't even know anything about me. And he was already plotting on me to try to say a lie like that to the cashier. Looking back, it's in hopes to make me look like a slut or whatever. Oh, she's living with a couple. To try to poison me in the eyes of the rest of the locals so that I don't have anywhere else to go. Again, that's a total inference on my part, but he definitely did tell that lie, and it's like, okay, why would he tell that lie? Totally just pulled it out of his ass, right? So, oh wow, I just made a connection that I haven't made so far about that. I'm gonna keep that one to myself. Okay. Probably about 2 weeks after that, I saw him again at his work, and he ran out of the truck that he was in. He was sitting in a truck outside of the Allsup's, ran out calling my name. I was like using the bathroom inside the Allsup's, and he ran out calling my name, and he was like, hey, like, you haven't, I'm still here if you need anything. the laundry only had cold water. It wasn't washing my clothes correctly. You know, I guess to give a little more, I know I'm rambling on, but since I'm videoing this finally, I just want to give every insight. You know, I felt, including like my internal thinking processes. At that time, I felt relatively safe. You know, I'm cautious of everyone, especially men. But I felt relatively safe knowing, okay, I know where this person works. Like, you know, I don't feel threatened by him. So, of course, I'm always doing a cost-benefit analysis in my interactions with any human, which is messed up that we even have to do that. Okay, so yeah, probably a week later, I went to his house and took a shower for the first time. When I did that, couple important details. First of all, I pulled in front of the house. We're talking about 1305 East Hudson Street in Stamford, Stamford, Texas. Don't ever go to that house. Yeah. And also, this house the assets need to be forfeited from this guy, absolutely, because he's absolutely a sex trafficker. He's absolutely in organized crime. Anyways, I went to the house. I pulled in the street in front of the house with my car. Important detail is that he said, oh, you can pull in. We'll reference back to that later. The second important detail, two more important details actually. Again, you gotta understand, pimps know how to be subtle. This is something that I had to learn totally without ever wanting to learn it. Everything seems like a normal conversation. Everything seems normal. Plausible deniability, right? Pimps and honestly a lot of these like more sophisticated criminals understand plausible deniability. They understand to not admit to any crimes. Literally, because their whole goal is to keep doing this, keep making the money without getting caught. That's why they join up together like this. It's a huge part of why. Another thing I had to imprint on my own. So, two more important details other than him asking me to pull into the driveway. Second important detail is that he said there's like a foyer and then there's the door to the bathroom, and the foyer leads into the doors to the other two bedrooms. So there's a door on each. There's like a foyer door, bathroom door, and then two other doors to each bedroom in the house. And he had said at the time, oh, well, it gets really steamy in there, so you might want to leave the door to the bathroom open while you're showering. And I just kind of looked like, oh, like, I didn't think much of it because there is no fan in that bathroom. Of course, I didn't do that. Leave the door open and keep the foyer door closed. But I didn't think anything of it. At the time, I just didn't do it, right? So this is where my instincts helped me really early on, that I didn't even put the pieces together. I just knew my own rules for myself and how I interact with the world. So of course I didn't do that. I did close the bathroom door. Second important detail about this first shower is that he was sitting in the living room with the music blaring extremely loud with two large speakers. And like sitting, like doing this weird fucking thing where he's like jamming to the music, and I just thought he was being weird. Okay, so back to the shower. Took the shower, and then I just left immediately. I was just like, I had other things to do that day, and I just left immediately, like putting my other things to do that day at the top of my agenda. And looking back, there were subconscious cues that told me to leave early. And like not just like sit there and even talk to him. what I want to say about that first shower is that looking back, of course, they were this organized criminal syndicate that he's a part of, that he reports to someone above him, right? They were planning to rape me from the beginning. The speakers, I think, were a huge part of that. And the door thing was a huge part of that. Like, I think probably if I had left that door open, that combined with the very loud speakers means that if they had snuck into the bathroom, I wouldn't have even heard it while I'm in the shower naked. Of course, that's all speculation, but why else would all that, right? Like, those are relatively unimportant details compared to the rest of this whole thing. But, like, they were wasting no time. Like, why else were the speakers so loud and the whole door thing? No, it's not a coincidence. Okay, so I left the house and I was like, oh, he seemed surprised that I was leaving so early, but he was still super nice. So I left, and then I texted him that 30 minutes later, and I was like, oh, okay, sorry, I just had other things to do. Again, this is someone I think can be, again, at this point, I'm not totally conscious of what just happened to me. Those are just tiny details that are just odd. Because another thing that pimps do is they do tests to see how much they can get away with without any resistance on behalf of the victim. If they do get away with it, they escalate to the next step, right? So I think that the whole you can leave the door open was a boundary test. You can leave the door open while you're showering. Was a boundary test to see if I would do that. And that because he didn't get away with that, crossing that boundary, I think they probably held off on just opening the door and raping me that very first time to begin with, because you got to see it from the perspective of the pimp, from organized crime. They want to do their crimes. That's first and foremost, but it seems like it's just as important to these people that they get away with their crimes. So that's part of why they form these syndicates together, is so that they have the benefit of all the planning that having multiple heads going into this does. So I think that because I did not let him cross that boundary of the whole door thing, they said, okay, hold on, we need to do this differently to rape this girl. I texted him that day. I was 30 minutes later, I was sorry, I have these properties. I have this property, I need to work on my tiny home. I hadn't even told him that until then. He was like, oh, what kind of property is it? Is it big? I didn't respond to it. After that, I was like, thanks for the shower. I have to work on my tiny home. He was like, oh, what's the property? Is it big? And then he's like, I didn't respond. And probably 20 minutes later, he's like, send me a picture of your property. And then he texts me again. And he's like, send me a picture of your property. I just didn't respond. Probably about 2 weeks later, I responded. I don't know. I can't remember for sure when I responded to him. Maybe I responded a few days later. I don't know. But what I do know is that I went and took a shower a second time because, unfortunately, there were other efforts from other organized criminals in this small town to sabotage my female friendships in the area. I do know that it is connected, unfortunately. I know for sure that it is connected to this guy, and I can say more, even though it was other people who were doing that sabotage. I can say more on that later, how I know it's connected. Took me months to figure out, okay, that was part of another plot to make sure I had nowhere to go for even something like a shower while I'm working on my tiny home, to isolate me so that I depend on the syndicate for something. i.e. a shower. So, yes, probably a week later or 2 weeks later, I don't know for sure, I went over there a second time. This time I socialized with him, I hung out with him because I had to do my laundry. Laundry takes probably 2.5 hours. So I sat there and watched TV with him after I took a shower. Just talked to him, whatever. You know, he still seemed cool. Okay, here's where it gets, so, and I've reported this to the appropriate people, all of this, right? During this time, I started to think that we were friends to some extent, because he seemed cool. And there was a little bit of flirting that went on towards the end, but it was still extremely subtle flirting. I never even touched him. I think I hugged him maybe twice when I was leaving, but no, I never touched him or anything like that. But I did, kind of flirt with him. I thought he was cool and we could be friends. And towards the end, yeah, I was kind of attracted to him. That doesn't excuse being raped. Anyways, the third time that I went over there and took a shower and did my laundry, we ate some pizza, and he, I'll get into more details about his behavior during these few hours I spent socializing with him. The most important part is that I had gotten out of the shower and I was resting my eyes on his couch while my clothes were in the dryer. I was resting my eyes like this for maybe 2 minutes, but I wasn't asleep because I know better than to fall asleep. Even though I shouldn't have to, it should be okay to fall asleep. But I was just resting my eyes. I was totally awake. And then I hear a camera click, like a camera shutter click. And one thing important to know about me is that I learned early on to believe my senses. Part of the reason that pimps get away with this stuff is because people engage in cognitive dissonance and denial. Most people on an everyday basis engage in some amount of denial and cognitive dissonance just to function. Because of where I was at in my life at that point, I didn't have the luxury of ever doing that. Engaging in denial or cognitive dissonance when it comes to my safety. So not only that, but also I've been through things in my life that affirmed at a relatively young age not to be in denial, not to be partially asleep, because most people's thinking is, no, there's no way he just took a picture of me while I'm laying here, that's weird and creepy. No, I knew what I heard and I didn't question what I had heard. So as soon as I heard that, I opened my eyes and I was like, huh. I went to the bathroom. I think I used the bathroom. And then I stood up and said to him do you want to walk to the gas station and buy me a Black and Mild? Because I immediately knew I was uncomfortable and my safety was at risk after that. And he was he was still cool, but he wasn't he was non-committal about it. I was like, you know what? No, that's lame. I'll go and get a Black and Mild. So I went in my car, because at first he was like, no, and then he was like, well, yeah, I'll walk to the store and get you a Black and Mild. I was like, no, that's lame. I'll go. I'm going to just go in my car and get a Black and Mild. So I did that. I left his house. Again, my laundry's still in the dryer. I left his house, went and bought a Black and Mild, and came back probably 10 minutes later. When I came back, I was like, hey, you want to talk to me outside? Because, I'm hyper vigilant about my safety, so I knew, okay, this person took a picture of me when he thought I was sleeping. Didn't know why he had done that yet, but I knew for a fact that he had. I was like, you want to come like talk to me outside? And he was like, no, you know. So I had to get my laundry anyway. So like I found a way to indirectly address what had just happened. More on that later. And the other important piece about this is that during that time that I went over there and socialized with him and did my laundry, he told me that he was born into the Bonanno crime family, and that he was from California. Now, at the time, he was overall, I mean, he had already told me he was from California, but he told me that important detail. I didn't know anything about any organized crime or any crime families' names or anything like that. At the time, he was like presenting himself as this squeaky clean, like he just works at the Allsups, you know. So at the time that he told me that, I bought it in the sense that it just sounded like he had been born into that, and he moved here to Texas to get away from that, pretty much. At the time, I still bought that. But, so anyway, that's a really important detail. I remained in contact with him for probably 4 more days. Until April 18th. I blocked his number. More on that later.